Hi, everyone. My name is Akanksha Rawat. I'm a third-year electrical engineering major, and I'm a representative of IEEE. But today I want to talk about a club of future female electrical engineers. That's a club here where we try to promote the retention of women in electrical engineering, and we do that by trying to create a community and basically host different events where we host fabulous women to come and talk about their great experiences here. But today I also have the great opportunity to introduce Ponni Carlin. She's the Director of Business Development and Strategy. And while I was talking to her, she said she made, fabulous, okay? She said 10% of the revenue of Tessolve comes from her. Her marketing, she's top tier, right? She has over 9 years of experience developing business strategies, closing large deals, and driving new initiatives that enhance not only revenue growth, but customer satisfaction. And she works alongside the engineering R&D team for it. And some cool things about her are that prior to entering the semiconductor world, she spent 7 years in biotech, where she focused on biofuels and drug development. And that was really cool to me because I thought you'd only need semiconductor experience to enter this field, right? But in her free time, Ponni is also involved in promoting her native language through California Tamil Academy. And in her free time, she enjoys traveling, doing puzzles, and spending time with her husband and 2 children. So please help me welcome Ponni Carlin. Thank you.
All my fellow panelists will be sitting up here with me, but I guess I will start. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you guys have been enjoying the sessions so far. Sam did just a fabulous job introducing the semiconductor industry and kind of her journey. So we're hoping that with the next panel, we're going to continue that effort. And our objective is that at the end of the panel, we've at least piqued your interest enough to consider a path in semiconductors. So a little bit of background about myself before I invite my wonderful panelists. My name is Ponni Carlin, so it is Ponni, like the baby horse, so don't feel shy about calling me that. I am a UC Davis alum, so yeah. It's been 15 years since I've been back. I loved my time here. And as Akshana mentioned, I have a degree in microbiology and a master's in microbial biotechnology. So my path clearly was not straight into semiconductors. So a fun story there, my father is actually in semiconductors. So you would think that my path would have been maybe a little more clear, I knew exactly what he did. But I don't know if people do it anymore, but we used to have those take your daughter to work days. And when I went in, I would see that all the women were either in administration or in HR. There was no women in engineering or on the business side. So I never quite connected with the industry in that way. So I ended up going down the science path and thought about pre-med, that didn't work out, but stuck in biotechnology. But thanks to very supportive parents and extremely persistent dad, he pulled me into this industry. He is actually the founder of Tessolve, and he really wanted me to come and create a legacy with him. So it took me a long time, it took 7 years in biotech, but now I've been in semiconductors for about 10 years. And I love it, and I'm a living example of how not everybody's path has to be the same, and you definitely don't have to you can pivot anytime. I think Sam made that very clear. So I think with that, before we dive into the panelists, I have one quick question. How many of you knew what semiconductors were before you walked into this room? Okay, well, I hope so. That's good. This is a really large number. Now, how many of you knew about semiconductors before COVID, before the supply chain issues? Okay, well, we got some so-sos. This is an impressive bunch. I can tell you, silver lining in the supply chain issues is that now my friends know what I do for a living. Before they knew I was in business, I was marketing, sales, but they had no clue what semiconductors was. But today, I can tell you that everybody knows what a chip is. So at least that was the positive. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists who are going to talk about their journey, and they're going to talk about challenges they have faced and solutions that they are spearheading and hoping that that's going to open more opportunities for you all. So Nitza, I'd like you to come up here and kickstart it. Faster, Nitza.
Hi, I'm Nitza. It's like pizza with an N. Nitza, pizza, pizza, Nitza. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I went to school at MIT, got my bachelor's and master's, and I didn't quite fall into test. Well, actually, I didn't fall into semiconductors as I wanted to actually stay in Boston. So, and one of the big companies there was Teradyne, and they happened to be in semis. I said, okay. And let's see, what else are we supposed to say?
What do you do today?
Oh, what I do today, right. I'm the VP of Business Development at proteanTecs. It's a 5-year-old Israeli startup company. I spent 22 years in test development, product engineering, and operations. But I must tell you, just like Sam, I really like pivoting and figuring out how, from an engineering standpoint, what I'm going to be doing in business. So thank you. Nice to be here.
Yes. So Nitza is a great example of how she went the other way, right? She went from a very technical position and now doing business development. And she works for an Israeli company, so very global industry as well. So next, could I have Deborah please come up and introduce herself? Oh, I didn't go in order. I didn't know there was an order.
So I'll stay with my picture. Hi, I'm Deb Stromberg. I work at Intel. I'm actually out of the office in Folsom, and I live here in Davis, so I'm always excited to get to come to campus. Yeah. I went to the University of Illinois, graduated EE bachelor's, and was extremely lucky, that's a whole story, and got a job at Intel right out of school. And I started in product engineering and test and did that for a long time. So, pretty much I've been at Intel 26 years, always in engineering. I got on the leadership track and always run engineering teams. Spanned all types of engineering from the very front end to the very back end. I love getting products out the door to customers. And so I think that's what I do. I get products out the door. Okay.
Right. Awesome.
Oh, I'll sit under my picture.
Can we have Neeti come up and introduce herself?
Make sure I'm standing next to my picture. Hi, I'm Neeti Bhatnagar. Let me see how I started my journey. I actually fell into semiconductors. So I have an undergraduate degree in math, physics, and computer science, and then a master's degree in computer science. So I was a very hardcore software compilers type of person. I worked for a parallel computing startup as my first job. And then I saw this opening at a company at electronic design automation. I had no idea what electrical engineering was. So I started up at Cadence, bringing my compiler skills. I don't know if any of you have done a Verilog course. So I started my journey at Cadence designing a VHDL simulator. So it's just language, it compiles down into something different from, say, a C compiler. But that's kind of how I got started. And so that was a really exciting journey because I learned about electronic design. What we do is we build tools for, electronic design engineers from all stages of your design. to really automate that process, which means you really need to understand that domain, but you bring all the software skills to it. And for me personally, I've been in engineering all my careers, like Deborah. I love building new technologies, bringing products out the door. And through my journey, I mean, I started managing a team very early in my career, about 5-6 years in, because probably like to organize all the chaos around me, and so they made me a manager. But I made a choice, and I think this is back to Samantha, you have to make choices. I made a choice that this is not what I want to do at this stage of my career. I want to be a deep technologist. So I went back to being what's called an individual contributor for many years, and then later came back into a management role, but it's always an engineering management role, and bringing new products and technologies out to the market is what I do, and I do well. So that's me. I love being here.
A fellow UC Davis alum joining us today. Introduce yourself.
All right, so hi everyone, hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm Leyla Hashémi, I'm with Keysight Technologies, and I'm happy to be here with some of my colleagues today. I am a UC Davis alum. I studied material science, got my master's degree before I went into what I thought at the time was the real world and got a job in the industry. I'm born and raised in Iran. I spent my childhood in the south of Iran, and where it's known for the oil industry, right? And both my parents worked in a national oil company. My father as a dentist, my mom as a chemical engineer. And then I did my high school and undergrad in the capital, Tehran, before I moved to California and UC Davis for my continuing my education. At Keysight, I started my career as a process engineer in manufacturing machined parts for basically electromechanical components. And then I did that for about 5 years, and I managed some projects and worked with a bunch of different teams in different departments. And then at some point I started thinking, do I want to go into management? Is it something I can consider? I saw people who didn't look like they were 50 years older than me that were going into management. So I figured maybe that's a possibility. And speaking of choices and decisions, I'll come back to it later. I decided to pursue it, so I went into engineering management, and I managed a team of process and integration engineers who developed microcircuits for our new product introductions. Pretty exciting. I did that for a few years, and then until a couple years ago, where a new opportunity made itself available at Keysight, a different organization. So I moved to Keysight Labs, which is where I work now, and there we we invent and really develop the latest and greatest technologies that are then become available to the rest of Keysight for designing new products and solutions. So that's where I'm now, and we do, my engineering team is responsible for developing the system and package and the integrated circuits, or basically chips, that go into it. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, so I think the best place to start is at the beginning. So I think, Neeti, you talked about this a little bit, but you had a very strong support system of women and a very supportive dad and pioneers in their field. So how did that kind of get you into the electronics?
Thank you for the question, Ponni. So I was very fortunate. I grew up with many older women cousins who were already pioneers in their field. There was a PhD in physics. There was an older cousin doing a PhD in physics when I was only in middle school, which is a very long time ago. And I had another one who was the first mechanical engineer, female mechanical engineer in her particular college, and an economist who's now running the planning commission for India. But to me, I didn't know that they were the only women in their fields at the time. To me, that's what women did. And so it never occurred to me that I had to, question my science. Of course, I was good at math and science, and of course I was going to do that as a matter of course. So it's the it's the impact of role models. Seeing people you relate to, seeing them doing something, that makes it possible. It's as simple as that. And then I have Dad, who was a civil engineer, and he built dams and hydroelectric power stations all over the world. And I spent my childhood in Tanzania. He would take me down, I think even more than he took my brother down. He would take me down to the site to see, they'd built, they were making the reservoir before they, commissioned the dam. And then one of the most vivid memories I have, I think I must have been about 12 or 13, is him taking me down to see the turbines before they commissioned the hydroelectric power station. So we walked through this tunnel. That's where the water comes through. And you have these enormous turbines. And you stand in front of them and, you imagine the water coming in through that tunnel and turning the turbines, and you have electricity for, a region of Tanzania that didn't have electricity. It's magic. And that magic, for me, he was my mentor. And so like Samantha, it's these mentors come early in life, or you find them later in life. You have to find them in every stage of your life. I was very fortunate to have them. But through my career, right, I've had really critical male mentors who made it possible. I'd never developed a new product, introduced it from concept to all the way to taking it to customers before. But he believed in me, and it made it possible. He gave me the guidance I needed, and I was able to do that. So, the role models and the mentors, they are both critical. We need to have people we can look up to and relate to. And then we need to have the people who believe in us and guide us to, through our journey.
That's absolutely true. Deb, I think you had a slightly different start, very interesting story. I was going to take away from it, but you know what? I'm going to let you tell that story.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had maybe the opposite experience. I grew up just outside of Chicago, and I had no idea what engineering was. I didn't have engineers in my family. I didn't have anybody around me that was an engineer. I mean, nothing. I liked math, and so I assumed I'll go to college, I'll be a math teacher, because that's what you do when you don't know that there's other options of what you do when you love math. I had a counselor pull me aside my junior year of high school who said, maybe you should think about engineering. I don't know what that is. How do I know what that is? Help me, And so she connected me with the program, and I went to it, and I thought, okay, this seems interesting. And I'll be honest, her advice was, apply to engineering, because it's harder to get into the engineering school. And if you don't like it, it's easy to switch. Okay, I can do that. So I did that. Went to the University of Illinois, which was the state school. And I'm very lucky. They have a wonderful engineering program. So I was very, very fortunate for that. Got there, and they said, you have to pick which type of engineering. Now, that was beyond what I had understood about engineering. So I opened the catalog. I think this is the part you liked. I said, which is the one it sounds like I know the least about? Electrical. Okay, let's do that one. And this is kind of to the choices topic. I picked it because I didn't know anything about it, or at least the least on the list. And I thought, okay, well then I have the most to learn. And I got into it, and I'm going to tie it to semiconductors for a minute. Got through my first couple years. Yeah, it was fine. It was challenging. It was interesting. I liked it. I didn't love it. And people laugh at this too, when I got to device physics, I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. I loved device physics. I really liked semiconductor electronics. We had an amazing fab lab. We were making the little wafers. Once I got into that, I was a semiconductor person from day one. So, it was choices. It was some luck along the way. And to be honest, it was saying yes to things that seemed hard. And that's worked for me my whole career. So, I didn't have those examples and mentors early on. Obviously found them once I got out in the world, even in school, very much so. But I do think it is an example of you can say yes to things even if you don't know what it means, and you'll figure it out, and you will be amazed at the stuff you figure out as you go along if you say yes in the first place, because you're totally capable of doing that. So
I think sometimes there's a misconception that you have to have everything figured out before you take the next step. Clearly, We're a definition of not figuring it out before taking a step.
I still don't have a 10-year plan either.
There you go.
And
You
I'm
don't need
25
one.
years into my career. So, it's okay not to have one. Say yes to things.
Leyla, you talked about transitioning from academia to industry. Is there reasons that you chose that, or how was that experience?
Well, the decision was both easy and hard at the same time. Like I said, I was anxious to get out in the real world. I wasn't super excited about taking courses and spending my time in the lab for the next several years. Just wanted to make money, like I heard of before. So I knew I wanted to do that, but at the same time, my master's thesis advisor was, I'm sure like some of you are experiencing, was trying very hard to convince me to stay for a PhD. And we had that conversation more than once. And each time I told her, I would love to spend more time in your lab. It's been amazing. I think I'm going to go get a job. And that's what I ended up doing. So that piece was hard to, at the time, being sure that that's actually the right decision for me at the time, because for most of us, once we go out, leave the academia, it's not easy to come back, or because we're making money partly. For me, that has served me well. The transition had its own challenges, knowing that going from university and research lab, where there are a lot of people who look like me in many ways, I went to a company where I was the youngest employee by far, by at least 10 years, in the department at least. The next youngest person was my boss, who was 10 years older, and lots of other people that could be my father. And I worked with them. I was basically their peers. So one of the things that I learned along the way through mentors and feedback and really internally looking and seeing what's working, what's not, is it took me some time to realize I'm here now. I'm a peer of these people, and I need to think of myself like that. Partly because I grew up in a culture where you always respect the older people. It didn't quite work out when it came to solving engineering problems. It took me some time to realize my voice mattered as much as everybody else's voice, and that was a feedback that one of my senior managers gave to me. He was like, this isn't gonna work, you have to fix your mindset. Think of yourself as equal to them. So you're all gonna face that when you enter the workforce. You're gonna be working with people who are a lot more senior in experience than you are. But remember, you're there for a reason, and you're there because you were the best person to fill that spot. So a little bit of the hard way.
No, I think, and so now Leyla has already stepped into kind of the challenges that you face in this industry, being women as well as being young coming into this industry. So I think, let's get into that, because I know it's challenging being a woman, especially as you're moving up the chain of command, because you're starting to see less and less women coming up, but hopefully these wonderful women are going to change that. So I'm going to start with Nitza here, because I think she's a little bit of a unicorn, and now I realize multiple unicorns with a lot of product and test engineers. So within the semiconductor industry, I can say that test and product engineering is probably like an extra desert when it comes to women. And so Nitza, how did it look like when you started? How has it changed? Has it changed?
That's a great question, Ponni. I was the first female test development engineer for Broadcom. And I was also a test development engineer number 23. I was there for 7 years. And the test department grew substantially to over 200. Can anybody guess how many women there were in the test development department? More than two. 5, I think I heard. One last guess? Not enough. 8. There was 8 of us. And it was a very difficult time. I thought I was one of the guys for a long, long time. But as you progress and you want to grow and you want to be promoted, I kept getting passed over, and for a lot of different reasons. And so I ended up leaving Broadcom and going to Max Linear to be a test development manager and to start my own group. 2 of the women went with me. Another one left to do something else. She wanted to do systems. So now 50% of the women at Broadcom left, in test development, left to do something else. Now I'm at Max Linear, I'm the manager. How do I ensure that there's more equality in my groups? So I actively, tried to make sure that I could bring women in, get the best person for the job. I took college students in, trained them, ensured that they were doing great. When I went from Max Linear to Synaptics, the same ladies actually followed me. But I also met with a lot of other female engineers, test development, product engineers at Synaptics. And then, funny enough, since I was VP of operations, I had a director of product engineering who was female, a technical director of test development engineering who was female, and a lot of other amazing female engineers. People started pinging me on LinkedIn, how can I be part of your team? How can I be part of your team? All of that because they could see a path, not just an engineer, not just female engineers. No, there's female engineers at the various level at Synaptics, which I thought was phenomenal. And then I went to proteanTecs because I was searching for something else for me, trying to figure out what my core value was. And I figured, as much as I love operations, test development, product engineering, I want to be doing strategy. I wanted to do something different. And I found proteanTecs, 27% women in engineering. They're female CTO and co-founder. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to be alone in the boardroom again. And the weight of being the only sometimes is immense. But then you find other women that you can talk to and get mentorship and sponsorship. But going into a company where that is the norm, and I've been in meetings where only females in the room, and I was like, this is weird and amazing and fantastic all at the same time. But then now I have to go and find the guys because I need their point of view, right? There's diversity. There has to be that equalness, and you get different points of views. So I've seen the landscape change, but I've been part of that change. And that's why I'm part of the GSA WLI, because I want to ensure that women are part of the semiconductor industry.
And I want to add to that all the women up here and a lot of the women in this industry feel like, not only are they doing things for themselves and their goals, they carry this responsibility to open the doors for the next group that's coming in. So really encouraging you guys that we're opening the doors. You need to take the step to come in. We want you guys to come and make more changes. So I think, Deb, with you, you were, young engineer, you were fast-tracked into management, and now you're managing maybe older men in a team. How did that feel? How were some of the reactions, and how'd you deal with it?
Yeah. So I started right out of a bachelor's degree, so I was a freshly minted 22-year-old going into the workplace. Most of the men were my dad's age. There was a younger crowd, but about 5 or 6 years into my career, my manager, who was, when you said Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's who I think of, one of my early managers. He was that. He had wonderful advice. He retired. He was going to retire, which was a huge bummer. And he asked if I would step up and take over the team. Now, we were a small team, maybe 7 people, very technical. I was the youngest by a fair amount. I was the only female. And not only was that intimidating, but I was being asked to come in and manage my peers, several of whom who had PhDs, several of whom had been in industry longer, right? So, but I said yes, and they were wonderful, and so I got into that management a little early. And what I realized, actually, and I've built on it over time, I realized, number one, I had a skill to do it that some of my other peers didn't have. So there's a skill I could use and become a superpower that I had maybe uniquely to others. As I got farther in my career, I also realized, wow, this is where the decisions are made. So if you want to really make change, this is a great way to do it. But coming back to that, so I did that role for about a year or two, and then they asked me to take over a larger part of the team. And this was actually our wafer test team. And so I was like, oh, wow, great, okay, cool. So I was gonna suddenly have a 35-person team or something. And again, I'm not 30, I'm like, kind of making my way through my technical growth. And the day they announced that, this man came up to me who was in the team. And he was quite a bit older and had been working in this space. He was one of the more senior technical experts in our wafer test group. And he came up to me and he said, "I should have had this job." And I don't know where this came from. I just had one of those, when you have one of those moments where the right thing comes out of your mouth. I couldn't tell you how it happened. And I looked at him and I said, "Yep. Well, they offered me the job and I took it. And I'd really appreciate if you would stay in the team with me, because I think that we can really work well together. And I ask you for your support." And he stopped for a minute and he thought. And he said, "Okay, that sounds good." Yeah, he ended up working for me for like 15 years. I mean, and we're still, friends to this day. So, some of it too is that was a really intimidating, kind of scary situation, going into the room where you're the only woman or the only person of whatever type, right? Or sometimes you're the only engineer, or sometimes you're the only person from the company, whatever. It can be really scary, and I think sometimes you just have to kind of, go in, best foot forward, and be yourself. And again, luckily it worked out, and I was glad I said yes, because it really did set a stage. And I've stayed. I'm now a vice president. It's been a long road. I run engineering organizations, and one of the things I want to do with that is to be able to continue to hire more women, more underrepresented groups in the workplace. And I'm in a decision-making mode where I can do that, and I feel like that's a privilege that I've gotten to by investing in this as a career path. So.
Thank you, Deborah. Leyla, do you have anything to add about managing some of these type of teams?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a unique experience, I think. When I first became a manager several years ago, I inherited a team of 6 engineers, and I got probably 3 or 4 open positions to fail to grow my team at the beginning. What I inherited was a group of, interestingly, 3 men, 3 women. And they were all engineers, some of them in very, very early career and some close to retirement. And I say it was unique because I had the toughest time as a new manager establishing myself with the women on my team. And I know some women can relate to that in their experiences. There was in particular a woman who was close to retirement, and I think I had some very good productive conversations with her, some very good days and some tough days that we didn't see eye to eye, and we had to figure out a path forward for the business. So I thought maybe it was hard for them to see me as their manager with maybe 30 years less experience in the industry. And in another case, I had another woman who was younger, earlier in their career, and that was difficult too. So maybe because they saw me as a similar in career experiences or level, it was hard for them to accept that now I was their boss versus their former boss, who was an older man. So small statistics, a small group, but I did have a much smoother experience establishing myself and building those very productive relationships with some of the men on my team rather than the women. So if I were to give any advice here, was we all encounter those kinds of experiences that are new to us. I have never had a female boss, so I don't know how I might react to that in the future. But let's have an open mindset, and like what Deb was saying, maybe look in those situations, look for how we can work together versus that power hierarchy, if you will. And I know Natalie, my coworker, she's a new manager and she's experiencing some of that. So I don't know if you wanted to jump in and say something about your very recent experiences.
Not the same as yours, but more like Deborah's. So the majority of the people that report to me have daughters my age, and it's always in the back of my mind, like how to interact with them so they don't see me as a daughter, they see me as a boss.
I don't think the audience heard you. Also, we're recording. Could you stand up and say that?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was saying,
I don't have the same experience as Leyla, but more like Deborah, where most of the people that report to me are my father's age, they're close to retirement, and it's always in the back of my mind of how do I present myself so they see me as their colleague, as their manager, and not like their daughter. And so you have to always be careful of the language that you use, how you present yourself. That's been my experience so far.
That's a very good point. We'll have more questions aligned with that. I mean, I quite literally worked for my dad, so that was a little challenging for convincing him to not look at me like his daughter, but I didn't report to him, so that was good. I think, as you're entering your career and getting into the workplace, another really important aspect you have to look at is the type of organizations you're going. So you have all these wonderful organizations here that are very supportive. So I think there's characteristics you can look for in these organizations you want to be a part of. So maybe Neeti, I know Cadence does so much. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started at Cadence in my particular group or organization, I think it was the only woman, and in engineering. And for a while that was true. So when the second woman joined, everybody came and congratulated me. Said, congratulations, the female population just doubled. So that was, it didn't bother me because I didn't grow up with gender-related perceptions. So at that stage in life, it didn't bother me at all. But, as you go up the ladder, it really shrinks. I mean, the lack of number of women became kind of very apparent. So Cadence had a few programs, right, for these in the early days to really target it for women in leadership positions, right, just coaching and everything that was very targeted. And they really helped me find a voice because it helped me see that things I was experiencing weren't just me. There's a lot of comfort in knowing when you talk to other women who are just as, good at what they do, they're experiencing this, and you realize, okay, it's not just me. And that helps because then you network and you talk to each other. So I went on to, also lead programs for other women, within, and Cadence continues to be very, very active in developing women. So when you go look for, especially young women here, when you go look for, your next employer, your first employer, your next employer, ask them, what kind of women support programs do they have, if they have any? And even if they don't have any, ask when you start up and say, you found a program you want to attend, ask them, right? You'll be surprised at how often the answer is going to be yes. Because it's that initiative, right? Don't be scared to ask. Start up a program. I know a lot of young women who came in and they said, okay, we don't have anything for the young incoming women to talk to each other about challenges of learning about semiconductor terminology. We just overwhelm everybody with a lot of acronyms and terminology just to get familiar with that. Can we have some young people we can talk to each other? And they start that. So go start those programs because some of these support networks will be there and you want to tap them and you want to ask whether the employer you're choosing is one that has that active support. But there are also going to be situations where it doesn't exist. In that case, you want to start that yourself because, in our cases, I'm sure Deborah, it's true for all of you, is I didn't have a choice, right? There weren't any women. But for me, it's very important to be in the position I am because I know other women see that and see that it's a possibility for them, right? It helps open the doors. So it's not an easy road to be on. I think we can all vouch for that, but it's a worthwhile road because, electronic design, and especially where we are, is such an exciting place to be in. So many new innovations. It's like, I'm always excited. What am I going to learn about today? What am I going to, bring to what problems can I solve today? And that's something that'll help you, but you need to be, you need to have networks of women. Stay in touch with each other, right? When you go out to work, you're gonna help each other find that next job. You're gonna tell each other about, what you're experiencing and get advice from the other person. So, find those programs that support you, and they're there, right? Lots and lots of, almost every organization I know of has active programs. And if they don't, start one, or find one outside that can support you.
So that's a really good point. It's, if it's not there, to ask questions, ask for opportunities, right? So I think, Nitza, with you, it wasn't just, supporting women, but it was also on the personal development side. So how did you approach, kind of building out your skills or, asking for support?
When I first got out of, college and after first year, my boss asked me, he's like, Nitza, do you think you could present our project at this conference? I said, sure. How hard could it be? It was a long time ago, so there was no such thing as TED Talks. There was nothing on the internet to really tell me how am I going to make a good presentation. It was 25 minutes. I got up, completely panicked, resorted back to my Spanish speaking skills, which is really fast, and I was done in 5 minutes. I was mortified. I was out in the corner somewhere. My boss came up to me later and he said, Nitza, no worries. We fix. He gave me some ground rules. He said, in every meeting that you're in, speak. It doesn't matter what it is. Make a comment, ask a question, anything. When you're in line for coffee, there's going to be people next to you. Start a conversation, tell the story. I told lots of stories of a lot of fake dogs. I don't have a dog, I'm allergic to them. Lots of fake. Now imagine my surprise 15 years later. I am in a very similar situation as my boss. I have groups of engineers that are going to be presenting at the same conference. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to do the same thing to them. I'm like, no, I'm going to prepare them. So I told them that they need to practice. I gave them practice environments. And for the most part, they did okay, except for this one set. I was watching them present, and in the middle, they turned their back and spoke to the presentation. I was like, okay. That was the birth of our Tuesday meetings, 2 p.m. for the next 2 years. It was a mandatory session for all of my groups, and it was how to communicate, how to present. It was 6 different phases. First phase was a 5-minute conversation of just about you and tell everybody about you. And then it graduated for the 6th phase to a technical program review. Now, the first one, I had people who couldn't even talk for 2 minutes. You couldn't hear them, they were afraid, they were visually shaking. Those same people, 2 years later, were giving a 60-minute technical review to a group about this size, confident, happy, projecting their voice. And I think that was the most amazing thing I ever did for my engineers. And to this day, I have engineers coming and talking to me, they're like, Nitza, I hated it, but thank you. Thank you for making me, forcing me be better at how to communicate.
Yeah, I think, Deb, when we talked, you also talked about, some of these soft skills, and maybe communication was one of the big ones. Can you expand on how that kind of helped you?
Yeah, I think this is such a great example, right? If you can't communicate your ideas, how are you going to get anywhere? How are you going to get them out in the world? How are you going to get people to work with you, for you, right? So I can't top that. That's wonderful, and kudos to you. But I think it's true, right? Like, you can learn to lead, you can learn to communicate, you can learn to do a lot of things. You have to practice and be coached, and so kudos. That's great.
So the next question, I kind of want to preface it with a little bit of background because I know it can kind of be a sensitive topic. So, there is this concept of work-life balance. And I know that we should all have work-life balance. We should be able to have a personal life, a social life, a career, everything that we want, we should have. But in reality, does that actually happen? And are there sacrifices that we have to make along the way? So I think it's, a couple, and I'm going to pose this to all the panelists, but I think the question is, can you achieve perfect work-life balance? Are there areas that suffer, and how do we change that narrative for ourselves? And are there choices that we have to make in order to kind of obtain our personal goals? So I'm going to let Leyla kind of kick this off and what choices she has made and how it's impacted her life.
Sure. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. There's a personal element to it. I think, like you said, we talk about work-life balance a lot. We all know what it means. We all strive for achieving perfect work-life balance. What is seldomly, and I would probably say never talked about, is the choices that we, most importantly women, have to make to find that balance way in advance of finding themselves in that situation where it's hard to make the balance. I'll be transparent. Raising a family, and by that I mean having children, because a family of two is still a family. That decision will impact your careers, doesn't matter what gender. And if anyone tells you that you can have it all, send them to me, because I have a lot to tell them. It's about the choices and what we think is the best choice for us for the long term. It's whether you want to choose life or work or both, and how you want to prioritize each over the other, because you can certainly pick life, let's just say in simple terms, having children, raising your family, spending a lot of time with them, and miss on work, and there will certainly be things that you'll miss, knowing that a lot of your friends, peers, former classmates are achieving great things in their careers. And you can pick work and say no to children or postpone that decision, and you'll certainly make a lot of, you'll have a lot of achievements, and maybe you will miss on some experiences that some of your friends are having. And if you're like me, at some stage in life, you'll notice your cousins, your friends, your classmates, everybody is having children, and you haven't even thought about if that's the right thing for you. So that's why I said I want to be transparent about it, because we don't talk about it, and it can become a big topic of concern for you later in your career. So I would say think about it earlier. And I'll go back to that choice of this or that. But you can certainly pick both. Absolutely, you can do both. But you can't have it all. Meaning that you cannot give your 100% to your children and at the same time your 100% to your work. There have to be sacrifices and trade-offs and choices that you make every hour, every day, even in some cases for several years. You pick one over the other. And if you're like me and in your 20s, you never even thought about this, it doesn't hurt to start thinking about it, because at some point in life, you'll feel that those reminders and pressures from family and the society, and you got to pick what's right for you, because in any case, you are missing on some experiences, and you have to make the decision which ones you want to miss, and you'll be fine with it, but acknowledge them. And which ones you want to spend more time on.
Yeah, this topic is, just like Leyla, is very near and dear to my heart as well. So I'm actually going to ask all the panelists to comment on this. So go ahead, Neeti.
So, work-life balance, what's the definition? I don't know to this day what the definition is. And it changes through different stages in your life. It's what you want it to be. You have to really define it. And I completely agree with Leyla. The choice of your partner, right, and some of you may have other significant others, is really critical, because you want to look for that same equality You want to be equals in this relationship. And that's really important. So I'm at the other side of child raising, right? I have a 26-year-old. As a two-parent family with, both parents who had really demanding careers and a child who had 1,000 extracurriculars, I think juggling was life for me, right? That was not just for me. A very wise woman gave me an advice very early in the career. She said, don't let other people pin their sort of choice of, women should keep perfect house, you should do all of those things. Pick what's important for you and your family or your, whatever career goals you have, and ignore the rest. And I think I took that, and get help where you can. So we, in our household, we have no defined roles. Whoever, got home first made dinner, and, whoever's better at doing something. My husband is very good with the laundry and dishwashing. So he does, and he has no problem with doing that. And at different stages in our career, there were points where I was trying to launch a new product, and I was working day and night, I was traveling. He took over. And there were other points where his job demanded too much. And so my, careers are not this short-term thing. They're a journey, and they're a pretty long journey. So don't think about it as, what am I going to achieve in the next year? It's going to be 25, 30, years beyond that. I had a choice to, to run, to be the head of engineering and the site leader for my business units, in our office in Boston. But that meant I would have to live there for a while. And so, my son was off to college, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. This is for me. And I did that, and that gave me another boost in my career, right? And, kids grow up, they go away, they have a life of their own. They don't need us, telling them what to do. And so I have an even busier life and career, and, life continues. Like, your career is not 5 years, 10 years. Think about it as being much longer than that. And so you can have rich, meaningful lives, and you can have stages where you choose to take some time off or slow it down or speed it up. It's completely your personal journey, and it is your choice. But having partners who support you and who you support in turn is important, because you do have to do that compromise, right? I don't have a hobby because I don't have time for one. And I'm okay with that.
Okay, Nitza. I'm going to answer it in two parts. One, because I had female engineers who went through pregnancies, and they went through pregnancies at a previous company and then with me. And they said, Nitza, it was such a world of a difference because you supported me on a variety of different levels that other company did not. And to be able to be there for my engineers and the different life aspects and their different cycles is phenomenal, right? And actually, it went against what HR wanted. But I knew what was best for the engineer, what was best for the individual, and I helped them re-enter. Now, for me personally, I have a very abnormal life. A lot of people tell me I have 7 godchildren. And so I don't have any children of my own, but I have 7 godchildren. They range from the ages of 5 to 27, and they live all over the US. And so a lot of my time is spent wherever they are at. And I spend a lot of time with them. And I get to give to a lot of different kids, but that is my choice. That is my desire. That's what I like. So I ensure that I have flexibility in my life. Engineering is all about trade-offs. You trade off, power performance area all the time, all day long. You guys understand that. Your life is the same thing. You're making trade-offs there. Where do you care to spend your time? Where do you care to spend your energy? That's what you really want to consider and make sure that that is really what you want and not what other people want.
Okay, so ditto to all of that. I'm going to answer a slightly different version of it. So first of all, I don't use the term work-life balance. I call it work-life integration.
Ooh,
But that's because you're constantly integrating the moving parts, and I'm in the thick of it. I have a 9 and a 12-year-old, so you can imagine the integration going on. You all are just at a point in your life where you may be coming out into the workforce maybe in your 20s. I know at that point, so I'm going to go way back in time. I remember at that point, a lot of people, my friends in college were not engineers, and they said, why would you do engineering? You're going to have no work-life balance. You're going to have no life. Forget even getting to family. You're going to have no life. And I kept going, and I'm going to tell you, I got to Intel. I worked a ton. Yes, you work a lot, right? And I worked a lot with a group of, there was a group of us that were all doing that. But I will also tell you, we would work late into the evening, and then we'd go out for dinner, or we'd go to the movies, or we'd take a weekend trip to San Francisco, or whatever. And so I didn't sleep a lot in my 20s, but I also realized, I can go be an engineer, work my tail off as an engineer, and still have a life that I thought was a lot of fun. I had money to spend, which was cool. So to the phase comment, right, maybe for you, you're just seeing this next little bit, and this idea of family and all of that is so far out, I'll deal with that later. But I also say, stick with it, because you can even, even now, hopefully in school, you're finding some time to have some fun. Sleep's overrated, that's fine. But it's integration. You just have to figure it out, and every phase has its own challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I'm more in Deborah's boat. I have an 8 and 9-year-old, back-to-back kids, while I was in grad school and working full-time. So clearly, I thought I could do it all. It's taken a toll later in life, But yeah, it is a balance, and it is just how you prioritize. So I know that was kind of heavy stuff, so we're going to move into a little bit of a fun topic to kind of close out this session of it before I open it out to you guys. So it is a little bit cliche, because we want to talk about fashion, but it is extremely on brand for women in semiconductors. How you dress, how the perception that comes with it is surprisingly important, and maybe something that us women are burdened with thinking about a little more than our counterparts. So I think, Neeti, what is so important to you about personal style? I know you talk about that.
So, when you're in engineering, right, and you're the only woman in the room, there is an expectation that you need to dress a certain way in order to convey that you're smart, right? The idea that you could embrace fashion or, have a sense of style is you can't be. There's that notion that you can't be smart, you're not, which is ludicrous, of course, right? So for me, it's important. It was always important to express who I am through a sense of fashion, and that's quirky. Sometimes it's quirky, sometimes it's edgy, but it's always kind of changing. But it's an expression of me. And so I resisted, and I will find it, and even now at some point I will overthink, what are people going to perceive me as? But I need to be who I am, right? We need to be who we are, and we really need to hold on to that through this, because people are going to want us to conform to. We don't look the same. We don't speak the same languages at times. We come from, but we're, in the workplace, we're scientists, we're engineers, we're technologists, and that's what we do. But at the same time, we are who we are. So I won't say it's always easy, and I won't say I don't always give in. I will, for a dinner, I'll, with the board of directors, I'll wear a more black conventional suit. I don't dress conventionally most of the time. But I try and stay true to myself, and and embrace who you are and enjoy it. If that means you want to dress some certain way, if that means you want to wear your hair a certain way, if you want to look a certain way, it's completely your choice. It has nothing to do with it. And I think the more we bring that with us, who we are, it's that diversity of thinking. It's a reflection of who we are, and that, especially in science and engineering, I feel that that bringing those different points of view, the different way of looking at the world, is how we solve these difficult problems, right? I have a very diverse team, and I have a lot of women who work for me, and I love it that when women have joined my team saying, I've never seen an organization where a woman reported to another woman, and I want to work there. That's like music to my ears. But that said, I have men, and they're all very different. They all have different cultural backgrounds. So being who they are is kind of what makes it possible to solve some of the hardest problems we face in engineering. That's how I look at the world.
No. Personal identity is very important. Now, but I know, Leyla, you talked about, maybe having to change what you're wearing depending on a meeting or depending. Do you feel like some of that conforming has played well for you, or?
I'll confess to that. Yes, that's true. Depending on what's going on that day, who I'm meeting, what I'm leading, I do think about that before I dress for the day. And it's partly because I think that does affect my mood and my perception of how I'm going to react to those situations. Maybe others aren't like that. But I do think about it. And so, for example, if it's a meeting with the board of directors, which I don't have, but an important meeting, I will usually lean towards more neutral colors, the black, the navy jacket, if it's something important, if I want to make an impression. If it's a day where I'm spending time with my staff, my team members, people who know me, people who are not going to make an assumption of who I am based on that one day, I might wear red nail polish instead of a neutral color. And I might wear my more casual jeans, or I have been to work in yoga pants, I think, at least once when I had to catch a flight that evening. So that's fine. I'm happy and comfortable in that. But yes, I admit, I do think about what's there in front of me that day before I dress for it, partly for those perceptions and partly for how it affects my own way of looking at my day.
I think before I open it up to everyone for questions, is there anything else the panelists want to add before we see what burning questions we've evoked you guys to ask today?
There's one thing I wanted to just, especially where you are, you're going to be applying for jobs, you're going to be putting together resumes, you're going to be talking about yourself. One little piece of advice is don't talk in terms of what you did, talk in terms of what you took away, whether it's a course or it's a project. What was your learning? Talk about what excited you about it. Talk about your passion and talk about your impact you had, right? What's the impact of that project? Wrote 100 lines of code, or designed this particular board, but what does it do, right? What did you learn along the way? And show that excitement, because that's what your employers are going to be looking for.
I would say I'm a poet, and I've been writing poetry since I was 14. And throughout my career, I kept writing, and then somewhere along the way, I stopped. And only when I pivoted to business development, and I had a little bit more time in my life, that I reflected and I started writing again. Don't lose who you are, what you care about. Keep the curiosity, keep your desires, what really brings you energy, and ensure that you don't lose it as long as you're going through your path. And if you do, pick it up again. It's there, right? It's you.
Anything else you want to share before I open it up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Questions?
Yes, questions are exciting. Okay.
Can I get through?
Hi, thanks. So in terms of becoming prepared for a career in semiconductors, do you feel like it's more important to educate yourself on the technical side or on the business side first?
Okay, I'm going to answer first. I'm going to say technical first. I think the business side's important, and as you go, more important. But my Obi-Wan Kenobi's advice to me early on was, get really, really, really deep technical into something. He said it doesn't necessarily matter what, so pick something that's interesting, but earn your technical chops, build your technical depth and expertise in something, and become known for that by the people around you. And that was like one of the best pieces of advice I got. So I think early on, go technical, become known for something. You will earn so much like respect and confidence by the people around you that they will help you along the way. Business later. You need to know that too, but I'd say later.
I echo that.
You know.
Yeah, me too.
Electrical engineer. I was just thinking like I would like to work in the automotive industry. And then, for example, Cadence is a strategic partner with McLaren Formula One team. So that's CFD stuff, which is more mechanical engineering. So I would like to know what are some options for me as an electrical engineer.
Cadence, there's just endless options for you at Cadence because in the end, our customers are the electronic design who's who, right, including McLaren, but, it's everybody, right? All your favorite cell phones or just about anything you can think of. It's got somebody at Cadence, some piece of Cadence software was used to design that. So we need electrical engineers, and we need, and so they work with customers, so we have design problems to solve. But our software, right, even if, they're solving electronic design challenges, so you need electrical engineers for that. So there's just across every part of the flow in electronic design, we have a product for that, right? And we work with customers doing that, so we have engineers who help, they're application engineers who work with, the design engineers at that customer, like a McLaren, and, help them apply our tool and technology to solve their design challenges.
I'd like to just even add that in the automobile, there's 2,000 to 3,000 semiconductors. It's not one, it's not two, it's thousands. So all of those semiconductor companies need electrical engineers, right? So if you want to be in the automotive industry, look to who's actually using, who's in the automotive industry from a semiconductor point of view.
That's absolutely right. I forgot about the original question, which was the automotive bit.
Glad I helped you out.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you. Because I get excited about it. Like automotive, it's amazing because we see the complete spectrum of electronic design from, whether it's mobiles or hyperscalers or automotive. And you'd be amazed at how much of the electronic part is just common across them, right? Certainly in the automotive, right? Especially with all your self-driving, all your cruise and, Waymo taxis in San Francisco now, so you can get the, so Cruise is a customer, right? Waymo is a customer. And we know what kind of SoCs, what they're doing, what designs. So there's a lot of commonality that cuts across it, right? But of course, you start to look at, how the car communicates within, what problems are you going to solve? How does it do the edge computing? How does it communicate beyond the car? So Nitza is absolutely right. Sorry, I should have connected the dot back to automotive.
I'll add a point that's kind of a little bit of a plug for Keysight, but if you're interested in the automotive industry, don't limit yourself to a company that makes cars. You can work for a company like Keysight that makes lots of different instruments that serves lots of different industries, including the automotive industry. So for example, we have a radar scene emulator solution that tests these autonomous vehicles. So they can provide you with those cars, but they cannot ship them in the market unless they can test the ability for it to autonomously drive safely without the solution that Keysight offers to them. And that's the beauty of it, because then you have the option of working on an automotive project, and then tomorrow you work on something else that's not automotive, but it's still exciting.
So I think we have time for one more question. Oh, yes.
Actually, I had a question for Nitza. Thank you all for sharing all of your experiences. And I just thought it was really unfortunate that there was a company that you were working at to where you felt that the upward mobility just wasn't possible, so you should go somewhere else. What are some things that maybe you would have liked to have seen at that company to allow for more upward mobility? What are some pitfalls to avoid? Like my brother and I want to start a company, and we'd hate to lose anybody for those kind of reasons.
Right, and it's not that they didn't fight to keep me. It's just that I saw an opportunity that I was like, oh, I'd like to do that. But I think companies in general, especially when they're growing, they sometimes forget to develop their workforce or to put things in place to ensure that the people that are there are growing at the same pace where new people are coming in at different levels. So look for, and I would say look for different companies. I think like you were also saying that they have different like women's leadership or just development, leadership development, engineering development, where they're always investing in you. Because unfortunately, and along most of my companies, I actually spent all the money on myself. I actually never got somebody to pay for any of my education after my MIT degrees. So all through my career, I was spending money on leadership conferences, on an EMBA, on random classes, because every year I'd take a class to learn something new. And I spent all that money. And that's because I was investing in myself. So if the company is not going to invest in you, there's nothing stopping from you investing in yourself. And I really strongly emphasize that you actually do that.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here and being present and wanting to participate in this. And I want to take a moment to thank all my fellow panelists on here that have shared their insights. Not always easy to talk about the challenges we've faced, but I think it's really important for people to hear and feel like they're not alone. So maybe a round of applause for my panelists.